Hello, welcome back to the Water Dragon Arts Online Academy. In this lesson, I would like to talk a little bit about the Wuji stance. This is a specific posture that we use to prepare the body for Qigong or to do Tai Chi or other internal martial arts. And there's a lot of confusion around that. A lot of the times it's unclear what it's actually supposed to help us with or what it even means. So in this video I would like to talk about a little bit about the background of what Wuji is actually for, why we practice it. And then I of course want to show you how we're going to practice it. I know that from some of my students that when I'm queuing through my video lessons, for example, and I'm explaining the Wuji stance and we all meet up together and practice it together, then a lot of those cues are deemed not important. Quite often I notice that some people don't really place enough importance onto some of those instructions. And it makes sense because it might seem fairly simple in the beginning. If someone tells you just relax the chest, empty the chest, you will probably take a few seconds, just focus on the chest and just relax it down. And then forget about that cue again. So the thing is that we always have to scan our body from the top to the bottom and create and maintain a very specific state in this Wuji posture. So it's not enough to only focus on one area for a short period of time and then discard it again and forget about it again, but we always have to come back to this region or different regions in the body in general and make sure that we can relax all the large muscles down while we maintain an opened bone structure, skeleton structure. But I will talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Now if you hear about Wuji stance, or answers about what it actually is, you will hear such things as it's the state that you want to be in, the state before yin and yang existed, the state of singularity, and all these kind of explanations. And they sound pretty cool. They sound kind of fancy too, if you ask me. But it's not necessarily easy to understand for someone that didn't study any yin and yang theory or any Taoist philosophical things, right? So you have to have a little bit of background knowledge in order to understand that concept of Wuji even. So what does it mean for us when we practice it? Let's say you have not studied Taoism or you have not studied any ancient Chinese philosophy. What does it mean for your own practice? Now, first of all, you want to stand in a state that is basically as natural as possible. So you want to focus on the different sides of the body, from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right, from the front to the back. And you want to stand in a very neutral kind of way. That means, for example, if your weight is a little bit shifted to the side, so more of the mass of the body will go towards one foot or towards the other, then you want to get that balance back and you want to shift the weight a little bit just so both sides are perfectly even. There's a bit of a difference between the front and the back because of the way that we stand. We will create a bit more of a stretch and engagement on the back side of the body, whereas the front of the body is going to be a lot more relaxed. But we're not going to talk about this in this lesson today. Generally speaking, we want to create a state of neutrality. We want to be as neutral as possible. Why are we going to stand in Wuji? There are actually lots of answers to that. One of them is because it's a really good preparation for the body to practice Qigong and things like Taijiquan, because we will learn how to sync our Qi. And what that means is we will learn how to maintain a specific state. We want to be sung. The body is supposed to be sung at all times. So we are basically learning how to release the pelvis down. Right? We create that downward power and sinking all the Qi. We're basically relaxing all the large muscles down, let the pelvis hang while pulling the crown of the head up. Now, because of this action of relaxing all the large muscles down, they will basically release all the other tissues in between. So you have to imagine it like for example, lots of chronic tension in the back. The tissues are extremely tight, right? Through learning how to relax properly, you will slowly release these muscles. Obviously, there are lots of stretching exercises and Qigong exercises that will help you loosening up the body and open the tissues. But step by step, you will learn how to relax all those large muscles down. And this will release connective tissues and fascia, which are then going to be a little bit targeted, a little bit stressed, basically. You have to know that when we stand in this posture, it's a very active way of standing. Okay, so when you see people practicing Wuji, and if you have never done it before or felt it in your own body, you might think that that's a very static position and that not much is really happening there. But that's not true. There's lots of movement in stillness. There are lots of things that are happening inside the body that you cannot really see with your bare eyes. And that's why it's such a tricky thing to practice as well, because you need really specific instructions to really know what to pay attention to. If you're standing in the wrong way, practicing Wuji in the wrong way, you might actually just end up wasting your time, because you don't really get that effect that you're looking for. There's not much happening if you collapse in your spine, for example. Okay? As you're standing like this, you always want to stretch the spine a slight bit. And you do this by, again, releasing the pelvis down, letting it hang down, become really heavy from gravity. But at the same time, gently keep the crown of the head suspended from above. So you're basically having two opposing forces. One is the pelvis that's going down. The other one is the crown of the head that's going up. And you're having this stretch in the middle, which is happening in your spine. When you're standing in this specific position and you're Zhuang, you're changing the tissues step by step. Okay, you're changing the tissues because you're able to releasing the muscles, and there are different internal processes that happen. But basically, in that state, you're targeting the connective tissues and fascia and things that are sitting between each muscle fiber and in different other spaces in the body. There are lots of different connective tissues that we can reach when we're able to relax. So through standing in Wuji, we will create the state of neutrality, learn how to relax all the large muscles down and get a really deep state, really deep relaxation, which will be helpful for further Qigong practices and also Taijiquan. When we're standing in this posture, we're learning how this state feels in the body. Later in Tai Chi, for example, you want to always keep that same feeling. You want to maintain the state Zhuang. But you have to learn it in Wuji first, because you're just standing as neutral as possible. Whereas if you would just learn it through movement, it'll be so much harder. There are so many more things going on. There's so much more to pay attention to. I personally would say it's literally impossible to learn how to sync your Qi without Wuji. If you just practice Tai Chi, you go to Tai Chi class, and your teacher doesn't include any form of standing Gong. So like Zhan Gong, for example, practices where you're just doing static standing, basically, standing pole exercises. Then I don't think that the students of that person will necessarily come very far, because they will never really learn how to sync the Qi. And you need to sync the Qi in order to do different things. For example, to mobilize your Jin, develop your Jin. Okay, in Tai Chi, that's obviously one important aspect that we want to learn. Depends a bit on what kind of Tai Chi style you're practicing. And of course, what your goals are too. If you're just using Tai Chi as a movement art, then it's maybe not that important. But if you want to use it as a martial art and get really deep into that practice, then you certainly need to practice those standing practices. Another thing that we need Wuji for is because in this state, when we can maintain a Wu Wei, okay, like a state in which we are neutral and don't get concerned with anything, we don't try to manipulate anything, don't try to get involved. That's a very nourishing state for the body to be in. Well, it's a mental state at the same time, of course, because we don't want to focus, change anything with our mind either. In this state, we will basically allow the body to regulate itself. We will allow the qi to do whatever it needs to do, the body whatever it needs to do, and we are basically allowing our natural inherited healing capability to be activated. Okay, when we regulate the body and basically allow the body to do all the things that it needs to do, it's able to use that natural healing ability and heal the body on a deep level as well. So we can really talk about Wuji quite a lot, and obviously I've just been roughly explaining it. There are different ways to practice how to be Song. There are different reasons why we need to practice the standing Gong practice for Qigong and Tai Chi and so on. But that's a quick overview of why it's important, why we practice it, and what it's supposed to mean. Now I want to go into this posture with you together, give you a few cues. And again, as I said before, a lot of those cues actually need to be taken seriously. Okay, actually all of them need to be taken seriously, not just a few, because they're essential for you to be able to relax the body in such a way. There's no point in just it going in here and going out here right away. We always have to come back to those separate individual cues and check if we have applied them in the body. We always want to maintain these principles as good as possible, and as you continue your practice, you will learn how to keep them maintained more and more, and it will become easier. You will be able to stand in this posture for longer periods of time, but also at the same time stand in this posture while you're relaxing more, which might make different things a little bit harder again in the future. But we're not going to talk about that right now. So let's start getting into the Wuji stance together. And just so you know, I'm going to be very picky, so I'm going to cue you through the stance step by step in a very precise kind of way. First, we want to get the foundation right. That starts with the feet, of course. So place the feet in a way that they're about shoulder wide apart from each other. Now, I want you to place the feet so that they're parallel to each other. Okay, that's very important. A lot of the people carry, for example, chronic tension in the lower back, or they have a very tense and unflexible qua. And what happens is people begin to turn the feet out just because it feels a little bit more natural to them, because in that position the muscles are a little bit more relaxed. But this will create a very different effect in the body. It will align the skeleton structure and the bones differently. We do not want to do that, okay? We want to make sure that the feet are really parallel to each other. That's the first step. Now I want you to take each foot and lift it up a tiny little bit and then spread it out open. So you spread the toes as much as you can and then roll it off again. Place it on the ground. Same thing on the other foot. Bring it on the heel, stretch the tissues open, the toes away from each other, and then roll back off. Place the toes on the ground. Now, some people tend to go into a very wide stance, okay? That's a little bit wider than shoulder wide is okay, a little bit narrower is still okay too, but ideally you want to basically have them right under the shoulders. So your bone structure is aligned perfectly for the weight to be transferred into your feet. So the next thing that we do is we want to shift the weight onto our Yongquan point. The Yongquan point is this point here on the, about in the middle of the front half of the body. Okay? Maybe you know it from massaging your feet with like a tennis ball or something like this. There's this one spot that feels really good. About there is your Yongquan point. You don't have to find that point too precisely, but you want to make sure that you're not shifting the weight too much on the heels, not too much on the toes, but somewhere in that front region, just past the halfway mark of your feet. And there's a spot where you can feel that the feet are taking the mass evenly. Okay? If you're too far on the heels, you can feel that the lower back begins to collapse a little bit. And it's also a weird sensation, slight higher engagement in the legs. And the same if you're going too far forward and your balance is off, the weight transfer is a little bit funny. You're not necessarily collapsing in the lumbar region anymore, but that's also not good. You want to have the weight evenly distributed, ideally on the Yongshuan point, around that region of the foot. So when I teach Wuji to some of the beginners, well, first of all, I combine this with a lot of stretching exercises to open up the body, because a lot of the times it's really difficult for the people to feel that position that we want to be in, because the hips and the quad and lower back, upper back, everything is just still too tight, too tense. That's why in the beginning I teach people to tuck the pelvis under. Okay, so really literally, instead of making like a duck butt, turning the pelvis under and tucking it under a little bit. This will help them to understand the movement a little bit, the posture. But it's not exactly how we want to maintain the Wuji stance, because we're using our muscles to pull the pelvis into a specific position. And we want to keep the body as natural as possible, right? That's what Wuji is about. So if you're really tight in the hip area, you can start learning Wuji by tucking the pelvis under a little bit. Don't tuck it under too much. You don't want to do this movement and then be really tense here. You will just end up creating more tension in the hip area, which will prevent you from getting better at your Wuji. Okay, so tuck the pelvis under and then maybe ease out a little bit again. Now it's important to keep the knees in mind, especially in the beginning, because what happens when we are going to sink our body soon, then lots of people just bend their knees because they think, of course, when I'm bringing my center of gravity down, I have to be closer to the ground, right? So they begin bending their knees so that the knees are going way past the toes. Your knees should never go past the toes, okay? That's important. So one important aspect to know is that you do not need to bring the entire body lower to the ground for your center of gravity to go to the ground. You have to imagine that if you're having lots of tension in the body, for example, your muscles will hold the mass of your body in place. But once you relax the muscles down, you can sink your chi. The muscles are beginning to hang down. And that's what it means to bring the center of gravity down, at least in terms of Qigong and Tai Chi. It doesn't necessarily mean that you just have to go closer to the body into a lower stance. Okay? Remember that. So with the knees in mind, first we've just discussed the front to back movement, basically, how far the knees can go forward or not. The next thing is the left and right movement. You don't want to push out the knees to the side. You don't also want to keep them in too far. You want to keep them as natural, again, as natural as possible. And that means in order for you to relax the mass of your body down towards the feet as good as possible, ideally they should be aligned with your hip bones, right? Because if this is a straight line, obviously the mass of the body can go directly down to the ground. Makes sense. If you're pushing the knees out too far, or you have them in too far, you can imagine that the mass of the body will go down through the hip bone, and then it will go down straight towards the ground. Obviously, it's just determined, guided by gravity in this case, so it will actually go like this. Here, you you would actually want the weight to go further into this direction to the foot, but that's not happening. So a lot of the weight will be transferred into this bottom part of the knee. So you will actually possibly damage or injure the tendons around your knee if you stand incorrectly. So just make sure that the knees are positioned naturally in line with your hip bones and your ankles. This will make you feel a lot better and also take all that pressure off the knees off. They're still a little bit tricky to work through. It takes a little bit of time to understand how to bring the mass through the knee into the feet. But at least if you're standing like this with the knees aligned in such a way, you're able to stay safe and practice in a healthy kind of way. Okay, so we got the feet, we got the knees, position front to back and left to side. I already told you a little bit about tucking the pelvis, okay? Later on, and please remember that, later on you just want to make sure that that's being said that you're still tucking it using your muscles right now, okay? Later on you want to make sure that you just relax the pelvis down, okay? So you're just getting that position naturally through releasing the pelvis, through relaxing the muscles, instead of manually trying to tuck the pelvis under. Okay, but if you're still having so much tension in the beginning, it's okay to tuck the pelvis. So now we're moving a little bit further up, the lower abdominal region. In this region, we want to just relax. We just want to be able to breathe in a very relaxed kind of way. A lot of the time, people begin to pull the belly in a little bit, or maybe try to manually pull the pelvis down, not just tucking, but down, which will, funny enough, create lots of tension in the chest. Because if you're standing like this and you're trying to pull the tailbone down, basically, you kind of do it from the hip muscles and the back muscles, and it will pull kind of weirdly on the chest. Okay? So just make sure that you breathe in a completely natural way and allow the belly, the lower abdomen, to expand, even if you look a little bit fat. No one sees you when you're practicing at home, but at least you're cultivating and maintaining the state of relaxation, and you will not collect any tension in the body. The same goes for the chest. If you do some weird movements, engage some muscles in the lower back or wherever, and you feel that the chest is becoming tense, you're kind of engaging it too much because of whatever reason, maybe you're trying to pull the shoulders down, then just focus on this area and relax it down again. Release the tension from the chest. We're going to do that in a bit more of a specific kind of way in just a bit. So we got the lower back, the pelvis, we got the lower abdomen, we got the chest. We're coming to the shoulders. The shoulders obviously have to be relaxed and neutral as well. If you feel that one side is a little bit stiffer than the other, do a little bit of stretching. See if you can get that tension out again, trying to cultivate that neutral state. Very important, release the shoulders down. Okay, the shoulder blades are just becoming really heavy and they relax down the back. There's lots of chronic tension in people's back nowadays. That's like one of the main things. The two main regions of tension are the shoulders and hips, lower back as well a little bit. So it's important to do some stretching, some Qigong exercises that will help you additionally. But even just rolling the shoulders, doing some simple stretches will help release a little bit of that gross tension in the body so that you're actually able to relax the shoulders again. Now there's a point that it actually takes a little bit of time, but there's a point where you can feel that your shoulders will actually connect to the rest of the body again. The arms will connect to the rest of the body. There is a thing that happens when you press the shoulders down. You can actually feel how the tissues are pressing into the arms a little bit, and the arms come a little bit to the outside. Right now, what I'm actually doing is I'm just slightly pushing my shoulder blades down, and then I bring them up again. And can you see that in my hands? We want to reach that effect in a natural kind of way. So we want to be able to relax the shoulders as much as possible so that all the large muscles are relaxed down, the connective tissues are released again, and everything can connect back into each other. This is an important part to create that interconnected body for Qigong and especially also for Taijiquan. Because you might know it in Tai Chi, when one part of the body moves, the entire body moves. Through releasing and relaxing the larger muscles down, you will create that connection in the body again. Because the muscles are not preventing these tissues from connecting. Okay, does this make sense? So, shoulders down. The next thing is the crown of the head. I want you to pull the crown of the head up. That means this part of the head that's above the spine. Okay, not the center point of your head, which would be here. The crown is a little bit further back. Okay, pull the crown of the head up. It's like suspended from above. Again, here it's not like a tense, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I've been tensing my neck muscles and it's not this tensing and forcing the head in the position, but it's just a gentle suspending of the crown of the head. You feel a slight stretch in the back of the neck and automatically your chin will go inward a little bit. So I don't want you to pull the chin in. I just want you to focus on the crown of the head, pull it up gently, and this will result in the chin going inward a tiny little bit. In Wuji, we always connect the tongue to the roof of the mouth. This is not really too important in the very beginning, but later on it will be. It's connecting the yin and the yang vessel in the body. But you don't have to get too concerned, but just so you know already, this is the best position for your tongue to be in. So now we've talked about a lot of different things. Now we are doing the same thing from the top to the bottom, and we're actually going to all come into that position. First, you can straighten the knees out a bit. Just stand completely normal. The only thing that changes right now is the position of your feet and the way you've distributed the weight on them. So the first thing we do, bring the crown of the head up gently. The second thing that we do is we focus on the shoulders and we take all the tension out of them. We just allow them to hang down. Now we are concentrating on the collarbone. And you can always go back to the collarbone area as you're practicing, because it's the upper part of your chest and there's lots of tension in there. By focusing on the collarbone area, you'll actually be able to release a lot more tension that's carried in the chest cavity. So I want you to think of your head and your shoulders now as one unit that's staying in place, kind of like a clothes hanger. And you're putting that clothes hanger up onto that clothes rack, onto that bar. And then the rest of the body, so everything below the shoulders and below the collarbone, is now going to release and relax down. You relax the shoulders, the chest hangs down, the upper back. You relax the lower abdomen. And now the most important part, you're going to relax the pelvis. The crown of the head still stays where it was before. It's not pulling down. Through concentrating on the pelvis and trying to release it, you will automatically begin to bend the knees a slight bit. Because you will have to in order for your pelvis to hang down freely. If you're locking your knees out, it's like the top of the body will be plugged on top of your pelvis. Kind of like a tower that you've built, like a big Jenga tower. Only when you bend the knees, you will be able to let the pelvis hang freely. Okay, so we don't actually focus on bending the knees at all. We're just focusing on bringing the pelvis down, relaxing the pelvis. Concentrate on releasing the pelvis just a tiny little bit more. There's a funny indicator for too much tension in the hip area, and that is if you're tensing your butt cheeks together, if you're clamping them together. It's funny, but it's true. See if you can just release the muscles there, relax. And maybe you'll be able to feel that your pelvis is just relaxing down a tiny little bit more. Come back up a tiny little bit again. And again, focus on bring the crown of the head up, shoulders and collarbones down. That region of the body stays where it is, and again, you're taking the pelvis and you're releasing it, you're relaxing it. Okay, so next thing, especially for the man, what happens often is that there's lots of chronic tension building up in the chest. Probably or maybe because we tend to walk through the streets with our chest expanded just to look a little bit bigger. Not saying that you're one of those people. I want you to place the right hand onto, I have to be careful with my microphone, onto the left side of the chest. The top fingers are just touching the collarbone, and the bottom, the palm of the hand is actually directly placed onto the chest. For the women, that's just above, a little bit higher. Okay, just so that you include the collarbone a little bit and kind of get on top of the chest cavity. Now, why are we doing this? Because we want to absorb our mind into the left side of the chest area. And if someone hasn't done that yet, it'll be a bit difficult. But now we're able to focus on the area that's directly below our hand. And we will be able to absorb the mind easier in this region. But that's not enough. Of course, we will also have to implement those cues that I was mentioning earlier. So we have to focus on this area gently and then see if we can relax it and release the muscles below our palm. Make sure that the shoulder, the other right shoulder here in my case, is still relaxed. Okay, you don't want to create tension just because you've brought your hand to your collarbone. Your right shoulder blade is still relaxed, just as on the other side. Bring it back down. Place the left palm on the right side of the upper chest. The thumb and the index finger can just be slightly on top of the collarbone. And use the hand to aid you in absorbing the mind in the chest and releasing down all the chronic tension, releasing and relaxing all the large muscles. We're speaking of emptying the chest. And emptying refers to just taking out all the tension and just let all the muscles release as good as we can. Just come back up a little bit, make sure that your knees are not too far down, too bent. And again, focus on the crown of the head, shoulders, and then release the pelvis down away from the crown. Shoulder blades are relaxed. Arms are connected to the back. Your chest is emptied. Your lower abdomen is relaxed and you breathe naturally. You do not want to change or manipulate the breath when you're standing in Wuji. You don't want to concentrate on a certain amount of seconds on the inhale or exhale. Or don't think that if you're lengthening the breath that you will be able to relax deeper. Although sometimes that might work. In this case, we just want to allow the body to do exactly what it needs to do and be as natural as possible while we remain in this posture. We want to relax the entire waist, side, front of the body. If you're relaxing the pelvis down efficiently, you will feel that you have a stronger engagement in the back, and that's okay. And now I want you to just go back to the feet real quick and place your mind on the weight distribution. Just make sure that you're still on the Yongchuan point. Make sure that you're not too far on the heels. This will collapse your lumbar region a little bit. This will also prevent you from releasing the pelvis down in an effective kind of way. If you're leaning back, then most likely the weight is too far on your heels. It's always good to shift the weight slightly forward on the Yongchuan point. Make sure that your butt cheeks are relaxed. And whoop, there we go. Pelvis can release down a little bit further. Now, one thing that we want to do when we have reached a good state, when the body is sung, then we want to check in and see if we can find any unbalances. Okay, I noticed that in this case, my right foot has a little bit more weight in it. So I'm going to shift a little bit to the left and just make sure that the weight is evenly distributed again. If you notice that you feel a little bit of tension on one side of the knee, or for example on the outside edge of the foot compared to the inside edge of the foot, then you know that you need to do some small adjustments just to create that neutral state again. And this could look, for example, like just adjusting the knees a little bit. Trying to get that direct path for the weight of the body to travel down towards the feet. If you notice that you've come a little bit too low, that your knees are maybe a little bit too far forward, just focus on the crown of the head and gently pull the crown up a little bit higher while you keep the pelvis relaxed. Come up a tiny little bit. It's probably hardly visible for you guys, but just trust yourself and trust your own feelings and sensations. And then again, leave the head and the crown and the shoulders where they are, and concentrate on relaxing the pelvis down again. It happens often that you kind of keep sinking and keep sinking, but at some point you kind of hit that limit of your qua. And you always have to come back up a little bit and try to be more sung. Try to release the pelvis more down, relax it more. The more you are able to relax the pelvis down, the more you feel some slight engagement in your waist, and that's okay. This state, although it's about relaxing the large muscles deeply, it's also about stretching some other parts of the body, some other tissues. But you have to make sure to differentiate between chronic tension that's due to muscle tension, due to using too much muscle power, and the stretch that you can feel in other tissues and other parts in the body that are due to relaxing those muscles down. Okay, and then we'll just bring our hands to the lower abdomen for a few seconds or minutes. And we just don't concentrate on the body for now. So I hope you enjoyed this Wuji stance. I hope you could feel it in the body and you were able to release all the large muscles down a little bit more. Hopefully you've understood a little bit what matters and take the cues seriously. Really try to focus on each region of the body and really release all the large muscles down. Now that state of Wu Wei obviously is a little bit tricky to maintain in the Wuji stance. It's a lot easier when you're doing a seated meditation, because remember, Wu Wei was the state in which you don't get involved with anything. Because you're actually doing a lot of things, you're actually getting involved quite a lot when you practice the Wuji stance, because you're constantly doing little adjustments. You find some tension, you release it. You find some imbalances, you bring back that balance. But you can also reach a really deep state in which your body is really strong. You're actually maintaining that state really, really well. And then you can begin to just observe the body as well and just pay attention to it. In the state of Wu Wei, in which your mind is not getting involved with anything anymore and just allowing things to happen in a natural kind of way, that's very nourishing. It's very good for the healing capabilities of the body. It will make you feel very good and help you to increase your health and well-being.